Hi there, welcome along. My name is David Garrido and this is Nick Anderson, who is Saucony UK's running coach and ambassador, and we are here to help guide you through your London Marathon experience and the 26.2 glorious miles that you're about to embark upon. And where better place to start than here in Blackheath, where the start line is. But before we get on to this part of the course, Nick, just tell us about who you've worked with, right from beginners up to elite athletes, and what you've been involved with.
Yeah, thanks David. I work with elite athletes, guys that have run 2:15 here, and some well-known Brits such as Ben Moreau and Martin Williams and so on over the years. And yes, that's been a fantastic experience, but actually the really important thing here is that I work 99% of the time with runners that are looking to run sub 3, sub 4, sub 5, sub 6. Charity runners, people doing it for the first time. So we really want to guide you with some tips that are going to help you to enjoy your London Marathon experience this year.
Okay, it all starts here then in Blackheath. Obviously quite a quiet day today, but just paint the picture for us, set the scene. What's this going to be like on that morning, Sunday 26th of April?
Well, you've got to remember there's 35,000 people that will probably start this year's London Marathon, so there's a lot of people here. I'd get here nice and early because of that. It's a little bit funny really when you walk up from Greenwich to here on Blackheath on race morning. It's a bit like March of the Penguins almost. There's thousands of people all sort of wrapped up warm walking along the street. You'll find it easily here because you just follow the other runners walking along, but it's a fantastic atmosphere of anticipation. There's lots going on with stands and people walking around and chatting to each other. It's all about embracing that final sort of hour or two before the gun goes, but also saving energy as well, and just trying to find somewhere to sit, I think, quietly and just reflect and save your energy for the big effort.
Okay, let's talk about preparation, because it's such a huge word when it comes to the London Marathon, isn't it? Just tell us about, let's say, the 24 hours before you actually take your first step. What should you be doing and thinking about?
Yeah, I think the last 24 hours are really important. You can ruin the marathon in the last 24 hours. You're not going to get fitter. I would personally go for a very gentle run the day before the race. Just go out and do 10, 15, 20 minutes of easy running and plenty of stretching. It's just nice to remind yourself you're a runner and get the metabolism going again. Then it's a game of nutrition and rest, and I think you've got to have your normal meals, but actually graze well in between. Don't go to the expo and fill up on every type of gel that's there because you're trying something. Don't eat so much carbohydrate all day that you've eaten plates and plates and then you've got tummy ache. It's eating the normal amounts and just grazing and snacking in between the meals so that the blood sugar levels stay nice and high, shall we say. And maybe in the evening eat your evening meal a little bit earlier so that you go to bed and you've got a chance of sleeping well. You're not going to bed uncomfortable.
Okay, and what about the sort of mental, psychological side of things? I suppose, you know, listening to music, maybe reading. I mean, what would you suggest people do? What they have been tuned to doing all the way through?
Yeah, I would try, if you can, on the day before the race to actually have a little bit of a sleep, and a moment when you're going to maybe go to bed or have a sleep in the chair in the afternoon. I mean, let the loved ones know that you're not being lazy. You've got a big effort to do tomorrow. But this is a chance to just get that extra bit of energy and just make sure that tomorrow you arrive feeling really fresh, because the bad news is you probably won't sleep that well tonight in terms of the night before the race. It's a real game of counting sheep and anticipation, and you'll read and you'll listen to some music, but you know what, if you don't sleep, don't worry about it, because the sleep you've banked from earlier in the week means you'll be absolutely fine.
Okay, so once the gun goes and all the penguins march off, then the first thing we notice, we're heading downhill. This London Marathon business is just a piece of cake, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you're in your pen, you've got to think your final thoughts, get in your bubble. You've maybe felt a bit sluggish all week because, you know, the body holds back the adrenaline, but then race morning when the gun goes, boom, you feel fantastic and everything's released. Please, when that gun goes, first few miles are downhill at London. It's a fast start. Just ease your way into the pace. Now, if you're one of the guys that's perhaps running 4 or 5 hours or so, you know what, there's going to be a lot of people around you, plenty of company, which is great fun. It's going to take you a good while to get over the start line and for your chip to actually activate and for you to properly start your race. So actually you won't go too fast. It's going to take you a few miles to actually eventually pick up to the pace you want to find, which is a good thing because that's the ideal warm-up. You shouldn't warm up for a marathon really you should use the first few miles to gradually find your planned pace for the day.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about the mental side of it, we talked about the nutritional side of it, those preparations. The other thing is what isn't within our control, which is the weather. Now, I mean, in the UK over the last few weeks, it's been relatively mild. It's been a little warm almost, but not necessarily a bad thing, is it, Nick?
No, we answer questions every day from real runners like yourselves about their training, and there's been a big panic. You know, it's been quite warm in the end of March, in April. Gosh, it's been quite hard training in the warmth, and is this going to affect my marathon performance? Do you know what? I'm really pleased it's been warm, because it's enabled your body to do quite a few runs now in warmer conditions. So in fact, you've become acclimatized. That's why elite athletes go abroad quite often to train in the sunshine, so that yes, they get better training done, but also their body acclimatizes ready for the big race itself. Now, we think on race day, the temperature probably is going to be less than what it's been on a number of occasions in April and March. So that means your body will feel great on race day, because the body's thermostat is operating below what you've been training in over the last month. So I think it's actually a good thing that the temperature's been warmer, and I think your performance will benefit because of it.
Okay, 26.2 miles, your adventure starts here, and we're going to go and visit some key points out on the course. Now, one of the best things about the London Marathon is that you're never short of a landmark, and 6-7 miles in, what better than a big boat to catch the attention? And doesn't she look absolutely splendid, restored to her former glory, the Cutty Sark. So Nick, first landmark in, not just the boat, but the crowds.
Yeah, this is almost the first pinch point of the course, really. The crowds are really thick and are deep here. A lot of people come out to this point of the course, partly because it's the Cutty Sark and you're close in here on the runners, but also because you can easily get across the water, of course, to the other parts of the course from here. So you will, when you get to this point, have a wall of noise. The hairs on the back of your neck will go up for the first time, and the atmosphere is great. We do see a lot of runners here pick up their speed because suddenly they feel like, this is it, I'm an Olympian, I'm brilliant. I would hold back and just take a step backwards almost and keep your gunpowder dry. Remember, the reason you feel good now is because you've only done 6-7 miles and because you've been tapering for a few weeks. This isn't where the marathon begins. This is just the miles you tick off in the early stages.
Okay, let's just talk a little bit about, you know, your body's different systems and what you're monitoring here. If they're all made up of different meters, presumably right now they should be all in the green and not sort of depleting too much.
No, not at all. You should have had your first gel or shot block, whatever it's going to be by now, so your first bit of carbohydrates in the system. You might have sipped on a bit of sports drink already by now, a little bit of water, so you're keeping all of the hydration and the sugar levels good. I would be making sure you're really in a positive state here as well. You should be pretty confident about the pace you're at by now. You've done 5, 6, 7 miles, you know the speed you're running at, so you're really settled by here. This is it, you're in the run, you've got the right people around you. This is it, the journey's beginning, but just hold on to it and enjoy the atmosphere without getting excited.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there will be sort of maybe darker phases of the race a little bit later on when things get a little bit tougher, but as you say, this is all about the positivity and making sure that you keep tabs on that. You mentioned sports gels, Nick. What are they in terms of how do they affect your body, and are there different types, and you know, what should you use?
There's lots of different types and different brands out there. Primarily they are sugar, and it's in a gel form which is liquid and easy to absorb on the move. So this is going to give you carbohydrate and sugar on the move with vitamins and minerals you need, particularly sodium, potassium and so on, and magnesium that you need, that you're sweating out, that you've got to keep the body's regulation and levels correct so that energy is transferred correctly and the body is in balance on the way round. So I would really consider taking the gels to keep the carbohydrate stores good. If you really can't do a gel, make sure you're doing a sports drink and take some jelly babies. Some people will even eat bits of energy bar on the way round, which are just small and broken up. That works for you. You probably need to be running a bit slower to do that, but it does work. It works really well. I even know people that have a bit of a sandwich on the way round. You know, if you're going to be out for 5-6 hours here, break up a bit of sandwich and eat that on the way around, and that will work for you really well, you know, jam and bread. But gels are the best because you can take them on the move, pull a bit off, sip a little bit, run for a couple of 100 meters, then the next bit, run for a couple of 100 meters. Your body absorbs it gradually and your blood sugar levels stay higher, so you are less likely to hit the wall later on.
Okay, and there'll be Lucozade gels out on course, but I guess if people aren't sure of what to use, maybe what they've done in training, you just stick to what you know.
Use the ones you've done in training. Don't on race day try something new. I really think it's a game of keeping to what you know and do what works for you. Don't try anything and don't take risks.
And that means that if you got your own stuff, are you going to be a bit like a Michelin man here, just with all your gels and all the rest of it?
You can buy these arm sleeves that the cyclists use and runners use now, and if it's a little bit chilly at the start in the first few miles, you've got your arm sleeves on, tuck your gels in the back, you can buy a gel belt. You do look a little bit like Lara Croft in Tomb Raider at some stage, but you know, you need to carry your own gels with you if you're not going to use the Lucozade ones. Do bear in mind as well that the gels are out on certain points on the course, but you need to be taking a gel every 30 to 45 minutes.
Right.
So you will need to take your own with you anyway to make sure you've got enough.
Okay, so the nutrition side is really important. Hopefully on Sunday 26th it will be a glorious day like today. Enjoy the excitement, but don't get too overexcited. Now, if there's anything that absolutely screams London in terms of the marathon course, it has simply got to be Tower Bridge. You see it on those aerial shots on the TV coverage, and the runners run across it at roughly the halfway point during the race. But in terms of energy levels, Nick, not the halfway point. Explain.
No, I don't think it is. I think the halfway point really is 20 miles. The great Greta Weitz once said that, you know, the marathon is a game of transport to 20 miles, and then the real marathon begins at 20 miles, and 20 miles is halfway. I quite like that as a coach. I think you've got to be very careful with being at this point on the course at Tower Bridge. The crowds are all around you. It is so noisy. The helicopters are in the air. The elites are just ahead of us going the other way to finish. So as you're running, there is a real temptation to pick up the pace and feel really, really good. And I'm actually going to say to you, hold back. Stick to your target and just suck up the atmosphere and really enjoy the occasion.
Okay, it's interesting because as you come over Tower Bridge, there's a slight incline and then it drops down again, a reminder that the course isn't completely flat, and not only that, at this point during the day, just starting to heat up a bit as well.
That's right, you'd have started nearer to 10 o'clock in the morning, and really by now it's midday, and you know, it will be a little bit warmer, so you need to have got your clothing right. As you come over Tower Bridge, there is that slight slope up over the bridge, so just keep your pace and be sensible there. And really as you descend and come down this side and you turn right and head out to Docklands, it's time to start to focus on how well you're running. Think about your posture, think about your technique, and just engage with what you're doing. This is important, isn't it? The mental challenge, because if you look left when you come off Tower Bridge, you're seeing runners who are far further ahead, but of course you're heading right towards the Isle of Dogs. So, you know, do you have to kind of, I suppose, as you said, not get too excited and focus on the moment that you're in right there, on the mile that you're in, rather than thinking ahead too much? I think so. I think it's exactly that. Focus on the mile you're in and start to focus on maybe why you're doing this, and keep to your strategy. You know, stick to taking your gels at the intervals you've practiced, stick to taking the right amount of drink that you're used to, make sure you're with the right pacing groups here. Yes, you're halfway in terms of distance. The job really starts to begin here a bit more, and it's about locking into that routine that you've practiced on your long runs. How tired are you feeling at this point, Nick, and what sort of things are you monitoring on your body generally? Well, I'm hoping you're not feeling too tired. I'm hoping you're in control of what you're doing. Yes, it's halfway, 13.1 miles covered, just around the corner, but if you've got it right pace-wise, you're going to feel pretty good here still. You know, whether that's a strategy of running a set pace per mile, or whether it's walk running, whatever your strategy is on the day, you've got to arrive here being in control. You've got to be feeling good and actually thinking, right, next mile, I know what I'm doing. The next mile, I know what I'm doing. So it's really having a process. It's interesting, isn't it, that the real pain of running a marathon, I guess, is meant to come a little bit later on. We'll discuss that with you. But what if you've picked up a little bit of a niggle? What if you feel a bit of maybe tightness or even cramp? What do you do to try and sort that situation out? I think there's a couple of things here. I mean, I've said to people before, you know, wear your calf guards, make sure you've got the right taping on, all the things you need to sort of prevent that tightness or soreness coming on during a race. You'll have taken advice from physios and other people about what to do. If you've come into the race with a niggle that you know could flare up, or you've been struggling in training but you really want to get round, I would step aside every 5k or every few miles and stretch out the areas that are really sore or you know could be a problem later on. So have a strategy of stretching on the way round. Then if you're caught by surprise sort of halfway or further into the race with an ache or a pain that comes on, again, don't be embarrassed, step to the side, get out of people's way and stretch the area out. Don't try and run through pain here because you've got 13 miles to go. If you keep stretching areas out and maybe break it down to a bit of brisk walking and then getting back into your stride, I think you're going to be okay.
And the other thing to mention about this particular part of the course, of course, there is the glamour moment of Tower Bridge, but also in terms of the cause that you may be running for. You were just telling me before that this is where the charities come the night before to pitch, and so that they can put their branding out there. This is where you're perhaps reminded about why you're doing this in the first place.
There'll be charities here, all the fantastic causes will be around you. That wall of noise that you get here will be the cheer parties that are there, all the supporters and the fundraisers. And I think that's great. I think if you're looking to meet friends and family here, don't be surprised if you don't see them, because there's so many people here, you'll just struggle to find them. So maybe they've got to go to another point on the course sometimes, or just before here or just after. But it is that wall of noise that is Tower Bridge and the London Marathon. It's a great iconic part of the race, and suck up the atmosphere and feel good, but please just hold on to your pace, don't speed up at this point.
Yeah, 12, 13 miles gone, but still 13, 14 miles to go. Okay, so we've seen the Cutty Sark, we've been over Tower Bridge, and the next really recognisable landmark once you've gone down into the Isle of Dogs and then come back up again is the hustle and bustle of the business district. And we've just stepped away from the course now to show you Canary Wharf. Very, very sort of busy part of the day here, so lots of people, but actually traditionally, you know, bad old days of the marathon, it used to be quite a quiet part of the course. Is it still the case, Nick?
I think Docklands and this area was always the tough part of the race mentally, because you've run away from the finish, having gone past Tower Bridge. And now at this point, of course, you're into the quiet part of the course and the route. It's just not like that anymore with the DLR and everything that's happening here in the financial district. There is so much support, and actually if you want to see a loved one run and race on Sunday, I would come out here as one of the points on the course, because you'll get a really good view of them, but there's still a very good crowd, very good connections to get back into town to see the race later on as well.
Okay, so as you say, we've got the DLR and the Jubilee line here, but if you want to resist the temptation to get on that train and get out of here, you want to stay true to your plan. We've got the clocks behind us here. That's a nice little reminder. You've got timings in your head, you've got a race strategy, and now is when you stick to it, isn't it?
Be patient again. I know I keep saying this, but you know what? 15, 16, 17 miles. How many times in training have you run 10 miles? You've done it loads of times. You've got 10 miles to go. Now is the ideal time to still lock into that pace and guarantee that you are going to arrive at 18, 19, 20 miles in good shape, ready to really push on. And start really making sure your nutrition is right at this point.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that side of things. We all know obviously about hydration, it's important, but is there any danger in overhydrating?
Yes, there is, and I think we see the odd serious case here of hyperlatremia. Don't get to a point where you're drinking water and lots of it at every station. You don't need to do that, definitely not. Stick to what you've practiced in your long runs, what's worked for you in your half marathons, and you know what, it's just a little bit and occasionally sipping, you know, a few mouthfuls and running on and absorbing that way. If you drink lots, you're not going to absorb, and it's just too much for the system. So think about what you've done in training, what's worked for you. Just because you see other people drinking, it's not a comfort. It really is just a little bit, move on, and then a few kilometers later, maybe a little bit again. That is as much as you need. And think about sports drink. You need the vitamins, you need the electrolytes, everything there that's going to keep the body in balance, together with your gels that you've been taking. You know, a gel every half an hour to 45 minutes is a really good strategy, and you should have taken your first one at 30 minutes into the race, so you should be now repeating that process every 30 to 45 minutes throughout the race. Second half of the race, I tend to say to people, choose the caffeine gels if you can, and you get on with them because it gets into the system more quickly and will just keep the head feeling really clear and focused.
And the other thing we need to mention about this particular part of the course is the real heartland of the London Marathon, isn't it? The Isle of Dogs. It used to have a bit of a bad bad rep, didn't it? But nowadays there's a lot more going on, and this is the part we need to just embrace what the marathon is about, don't you really?
You do, and I don't think there's any part of the London Marathon course which is quiet. It just isn't like that. It's a real spectators course, and just get out here with the family. There's lots of charities out here again still, and really embrace what this is about. But get on the tube or the DLR and head back into town. You've got time to see the end part of the race if you're clever as well.
So there's a race strategy for runners, but there's also a race strategy for spectators. Don't forget about that. Okay, so you've managed to wind your way through the high rises. Now it's the grit and the grind, isn't it? There's not a huge amount to see here in Poplar, but there's a lot to think about and a lot to feel. This is where it starts getting really quite tough, isn't it, Nick?
It does. This is, I think, the business end of the marathon. This, for me, is where the race begins. 19 to 20 miles. We've talked about it. Your aim is to get to this point and be in control, but you're working hard. And from here on in, this last 10k, you throw the kitchen sink at it, okay? You throw it at it gradually, and you have to probably work harder with effort to keep the same pace going. But how many times have you done 10k in training? Loads of times. So this is totally achievable, but you've got to get here in control and then start to push for home.
Okay, there are three words that I'm sure most runners have mentioned at some point when they're doing long runs. Those words are hitting the wall. Fact or fiction, Nick?
It does exist, but it exists because we put it there. Okay, I promise you that there is not a Saturday night moment where the van comes out and two guys called Paddy and Mick jump out and they build this big wall and you've all got to climb over it like it's an obstacle in the marathon. It doesn't exist in that way. You put it there by maybe not doing the right training. Well, it's too late to change that. We are where we are. But you put it there as well by not snacking and grazing, eating the right carbohydrates and food the day before the race. Morning of the race, have your normal pre-long run breakfast and then graze on that as well up until about, I think, an hour before the start. And then when the gun goes, as we've already discussed, this is where you ease into the pace and you stick to your strategy of the gels every 30 to 45 minutes right from the beginning, sipping on the water and the sports drinks at the right time, and you make sure now that you are completely in control all the way up to this 20-mile point. If you do that and you arrive feeling good, you are now ready to push through this bit that they call the wall area. It doesn't exist unless you put it there.
Okay, but for the ones who are struggling, and there will be some, obviously at this point in the race, Nick, psychologically you've got to be so strong, haven't you? And this is where you really do find your strong. So what do you do? What sort of things do you draw on to help you?
I can't make the marathon easy. All right, it's a game of chess. It's hard. It's 26.2 miles. The last 10k is tough. That's what it's about. I think you have to kind of man up a little bit at this point and believe that you can do it. You have to believe that you're going to be good. You've run 10k before in training. I would tick off the mile you're in and focus on the mile you're in, then tick off the next mile. Don't look at what's coming up in front of you. I think also I would start to have some strategies whereby maybe I dedicated each mile to somebody now that's special to me, so I don't let them down with this. You've got your name on the vest, so people are going to shout your name out and that's going to draw you out as well. And I do think maybe as well I would look at one or two of your best long runs, one or two of your best moments where you've done a good run, a training session that's worked. Draw on that. That's banked. You've done it. Now believe you can do it again because you are ready.
Okay, and in terms of just other things to consider at this point, you mentioned the psychology, you mentioned the race strategy, but there's still variance, isn't there? There's people who have good miles at this point, and there's people who are struggling and on their last legs. I mean, how do you cope with that? I mean, I guess you just shouldn't panic at that point.
No, you shouldn't. And you know, I've said you'll have good miles and bad. It's normal in a marathon that one or two of the miles don't feel as good. You know, that can be the energy systems changing in the body, and you've had a gel a little while ago and then it kicks in and you feel good again. Your body goes through phases. How many times have you done a long run and it didn't feel good in the first half an hour and then later on you feel fantastic? That happens on race day as well. But I think if you've had a number of miles here and it's just really starting to get hard and it's not your day, maybe I would pull over at some point and look to start doing some brisk walking. Just try and gather yourself, get yourself your focus back, get some more calories inside you, some sports drink, some gels, maybe some jelly babies. The crowd can be very generous. and at that point, you know, when you're ready, start to pick it up again. But, you know, really the wall, as we say, doesn't exist. Stick to your pace, stick to your effort levels. You are going to have to work harder in the last 6 miles. And if you look after your strategy and you believe in yourself and you draw on the right things, you're going to be okay here.
If you get through the 20-mile point, then you're on the stretch home. Okay, so 23 miles down, 3 to go. We're at the business end of the London Marathon here. Nick, at this point, what is the runner feeling? It can't be good, can it?
They're tired. They're really tired at this point. But this is the bit, I think, 2 to 3 miles out where you take your final gel, perhaps. It might be a caffeine gel, so it gets into the system quickly. I think it's the time when you really draw on why you're doing this marathon. Who are you running for? Why is it important to you? Remember the best long runs you did. You can do this. Chase the best in front. You know, be in your own little race. Nail the next best and the next one. And this is it. This is the moment you train for. The next 2 miles are fantastic. So really try and suck up the atmosphere. The crowd here are 5-10 deep. It's really, really good.
It's interesting actually, today it's not too windy, but sometimes that's a little bit of a factor in this little stretch, isn't it?
It can be in London a little bit because the wind can sometimes in the UK come from the southwest. So here it can be a little bit into your face. But you know, if that's the case and you're small, tucking behind somebody bigger, try and work as a group. To be honest with you, with the shelter, with the trees, with the crowd here, you won't really notice it too much. It'll be good.
And just finally, in terms of where we are in London now, we've hit the water again. You said the crowd's 5 to 10 deep. How much of a motivating factor is this at this stage of the race?
Well, you really are homeward bound. You're on the embankment. You know, in a short while, you're going to turn right at Westminster and really sort of make your way towards Buckingham Palace and finishing. So this is a bit, you've probably visualised this moment so many times on your long runs, when you've been training and chatting to other people. So really suck up that atmosphere and enjoy the next 2 miles. This is what it is about.
26 miles have been completed, just the point 2 left here, and this is the finishing line where we are right now. And Nick, I suppose if there's any moment that the runners will have visualised in their head, in their mind's eye, it would be this moment right here, isn't it?
I think it is. As you come round the corner from Buckingham Palace, you've got that final point 2, if you like, to complete. Here we are in the Mall. This is the moment where you've been out on all those runs and you've thought about the finishing line. Maybe you've watched the London Marathon on telly before and you thought, you know, I really want to do this, because you've seen the interviews at the end. This is the bit where you really, really engage with how you feel in that final point 2, and you just run to the finish line and love every bit of it.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, once you get there, then what do you do? I mean, yes, you've finished, but, you know, what do you do in those final 100 metres before then, just to make sure you're ready for that mantelpiece moment, but also when you finish the race itself, just to make sure you do the job properly?
Do you know, the one thing I would do is wipe your face, because you've been taking gels and everything else all the way around. Quickly do your hair as you come over the line if you want, but celebrate. As you come over the line, this is your championship moment, so put your hands in the air and have a great picture and really enjoy that. Then when you've finished, you'll be asked to keep walking. Just keep walking, and you'll go and you'll pick up the kit. The marshals are fantastic at the London Marathon, and they will really, really guide you and help you. They'll be there to support you. You'll pick up all of your belongings. You'll get a goodie bag. I would say eat what's in the goodie bag, and then eat the goodie bag as well, because you need as many calories as possible.
Refueling, basically.
Yeah, refueling, and try and get that refueling process happening.
And what about in the hours after the race? I mean, you say about keeping moving. What about doing something in the evening or maybe the next day, just to prevent any kind of, you know, soreness and things like that?
Well, I think you're going to spend time probably with friends and loved ones. I think prepare them a little bit for either somebody that's going to be really elated, or somebody that could even be a little bit inside themselves, in that the emotions of why they've done the race has come out a little bit. So you can be a little bit indifferent and so on at the finish line. But I think then I would keep moving around throughout the afternoon if you can. Sure, you're going to sit down and eat and rest, but if you can go out for maybe a 20-minute walk in the evening, there's a bit of research to say you'll feel better for it later in the week. And actually on the Monday, Tuesday, I'd keep moving as well. I'd keep walking about.
Now, obviously, once you finish the marathon, everyone's entitled to a celebratory drink, aren't they? Although just be a little bit careful?
Yeah, you know, I've seen it so many times that you're so excited, you go out and you think you're going to meet your friends or family and have a couple of beers and a glass of wine and everything else, and you know what, you get to about 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the evening, you've had one glass of wine and you're just slumped in the corner because all the energy is gone, you know, the emotions of it all, the build up to it all comes out, and you are dehydrated still, so be a little bit careful, but please celebrate. It is a magical thing finishing the London Marathon and wear your medal with pride.
Absolutely. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you
so much for all your tips. So if you are running the London Marathon, whether you are a veteran or whether it's your first time, enjoy it, and we'll see you at the finishing line.
fortunate enough to discover that running makes me happy. So through my running, I discover my own limits, psychological and physical, and I just want to see how far and fast I can go.
Today I'm running because I'm doing fundraising for Macmillan Cancer Support. My mom passed cancer 3 years ago, so I'm doing this for her and because I want to help people with cancer issue.
I wanted to run today to raise money for Alzheimer's research in memory of my granddad who died from it about 8 years ago.
Well, it's my first half marathon, and because I turned 30, so I thought, why not? It's a challenge for myself. So yeah, because I'm 42, believe it or not, and I'm like, I have to keep on doing it, and I love just sport in general. And just want to inspire my son is here, just for him to see that mommy can do it, and it's important, to do sport and to run and to keep fit.
Things that make you want to run. So comfortable, you can't help but run. Saucony.
The reason why I run is I like being a part of the community in my running club, Desperate Striders. We're a great family club. We all help each other out through times of hard times and stuff, and just great fun being out in a course like this, covered in mud. So yeah, love it.
So I just wanted to get my blood pressure down, and so I started walking. That wasn't working, so I started running, and that worked.
I don't know, it's like a primal thing, and it's just really fun when you're kind of not limited by like tiredness, and when you can just kind of go with what your body feels like doing. It's really fun, it's quite freeing.
We love running, I suppose, because it's just what we do. There's nothing else to it. It's camaraderie, work with a team, there's getting out there on your own and just bettering yourself, I suppose. But all in all, it's just enjoyment, I suppose.
It's just something to do in like the spare time. It keeps you busy.
Makes you feel good naturally from the endorphins it releases. I mean, I enjoy it. Run every day of the week pretty much.
Because it's hard, it's a challenge, and it gives you friends.
I'm really not sure. I think it's a midlife crisis in my particular case, but a lot of the time when you're running around a course like this, hilly, muddy, people standing on your toes, and you wonder why you're doing it. But when you've finished, you get a wonderful feeling of satisfaction, and it starts to make sense.
I enjoy running because it's nice to keep fit, and I feel like I'm improving. And I like seeing different places when I run.
5 years ago, I was diagnosed with diabetes, had gout in my knees, had depression and weighed 3.5 stone more. So I've used running to recover from all of those things and I feel a hell of a lot better now.
To get fit, to relax and to find my focus.
Just because it makes you feel amazing, you've got so much energy, and yeah, it's one of the best things I've ever done, and you meet loads of great people.
I just love the feeling you get, the endorphins, the buzzing, the people that are around you. I mean, it's just been an awesome run today with everyone. You just have the same mindset really, and it just de-stresses, and it's for me basically. And yeah, just looking forward to the Brighton Marathon and a half that's coming up.